Welcome to Life Partner by Casey Lee. This is The Dating Files, a series that examines real relationship dynamics with honesty and care. These scenarios are drawn for educational and reflection purposes, and details may be composite or anonymous to protect the individuals involved. It happened somewhere around the third date. She couldn't have told you exactly when or why that moment rather than another, but she remembered the evening clearly. A restaurant that she had suggested, a conversation that had moved easily from one thing to the next, a moment where he had laughed at something that she said in a way that felt unguarded and real. And somewhere in the middle of it all, something in her settled, decided. She just knew. His name was Michael. He was thoughtful and funny and professionally accomplished in a way that she respected. He asked good questions. He seemed genuinely interested in her life. He was, on the surface, exactly the kind of man that she had been hoping to meet. And so she decided, quietly, privately, without telling anyone, she decided that he was it. From that moment on, everything changed. Not dramatically, and not in ways that would have been visible to anyone watching, but internally. The frame through which she was experiencing the relationship had shifted completely. She was no longer in the process of getting to know Michael. She was in the process of building a relationship with Michael. Those are very different things, and the difference mattered more than that she understood at the time. When you're in the process of getting to know someone, you're gathering information. You're holding the person with genuine openness, curious about who they are, attentive to what they show you, willing to update your assessment as new data arrives. Your investment is present, but not fixed. But when you have already privately decided, you're no longer gathering information in the same way. You're now, without meaning to, primarily processing experience through the lens of a conclusion that you have already reached. Things that confirm the conclusion get noticed and weighted, and things that complicate it get minimized, explained away, or simply not registered with the same attention. You're no longer in the question of is he right? You're building a case that he is. She didn't experience it that way, of course. It felt like certainty. It felt like clarity. It felt like finally knowing after a lot of uncertainty that she had found someone real. That feeling was not unpleasant. It was actually a relief. But it had a cost that she would not see until later. The first thing that it cost her was accuracy. Michael, as she got to know him over the following weeks, began to reveal the fuller picture of who he was. Not dramatically, not badly, just more completely. There were qualities that she might have noticed with fresh eyes and assessed honestly, like a tendency to be dismissive when he disagreed with something, a way of steering conversations back to himself that was subtle enough to miss it if you weren't paying attention, a set of values around certain things that didn't quite match hers when they came up in real conversation. None of these were deal breakers on their own, but collectively, they were information. Information that she wasn't quite processing clearly because she had already reached her conclusion. The second thing that it cost her was mutuality, because while she had privately decided, he was still in the process of deciding. He was still genuinely in the question, interested, engaged, but not yet anywhere near the certainty that she was carrying. And that asymmetry, her certainty meeting his open inquiry, created a subtle but persistent pressure in the dynamic. Not because she said anything explicitly, but because certainty has a texture, and it communicates itself. It shows up in the way that you respond to ambiguity, in the things that you're willing to overlook, in the quality of your attention when the other person is deciding versus when you have already decided. And he felt it, she would later understand. He couldn't have named it, but he felt something pressing against his natural pace, something that was moving faster than he was, And he responded the way many people do when they feel that. He slowed down. And she interpreted his slowing down as uncertainty, which increased her own anxiety, which produced more of the subtle pressure. And so the loop tightened. By the time that she understood what was happening, several months had passed, and the dynamic had settled into a shape that neither of them had consciously chosen. What she came to understand afterward was that her early decision had not been about Michael. Not really. It had been about the relief of ending the uncertainty of looking. Dating had been hard and long and often discouraging, and when someone who seemed right showed up, some part of her had reached for the certainty of having found him before the evidence was actually in. The decision had been about managing her own emotional state, not about what was actually true about him. And that was worth understanding. Not as a reason to feel bad about what had happened, but as information about the mechanism. The premature decision had been a way of converting the anxiety of not knowing into the comfort of having found it. It had felt like clarity. It had actually been relief in the costume of certainty. But real clarity that she understood now wasn't something that you reached for. It was something that accumulated over time, as you paid attention to what was actually there. It didn't arrive on the third date or the fifth or after one conversation that felt particularly real. It built slowly, and only if you stayed genuinely open enough to let the full picture develop. Staying in the question is uncomfortable when you want the answer to already be yes, but it's the only way to find out whether the answer actually is yes. What this episode points to is one of the quieter and more consequential things that can happen in early dating, which is making a private decision before the relationship has earned it, and what that costs in terms of what you're able to see clearly. And if that's landing, I want to invite you to two places. The first is the free workshop, where I go deeper into how to stay genuinely open in early dating without either shutting down or deciding too soon. The link is in the show notes. And if you want to continue this in the private podcast, where I go into what premature certainty is actually protecting you from, and how to hold early connection without collapsing it into a conclusion, that continuation is waiting for you in the show notes. This conversation is complete as it is. I'm really glad you're here. Stay steady and aligned with the relationship that you want.